Hi guys, Jackie from Famished Farm, and I'm back this week with more recipes from my recipe stash. Why are we doing this? I have a meal planner that I'm using every week to try to stay within our budget, and I've got a 4-inch stack of recipes that I'm trying to get through this year to find ones that will go onto our rotation that we just love, and other ones that I can let go. They can go right into the trash. So what are we making this week? This week we're working on more recipes from meal delivery kits, and first up I have from HelloFresh a roasted pork tenderloin. On this one we have all the ingredients in the kitchen, including one substitution that I think will work out just fine. Next up from Blue Apron, spicy shrimp and bucatini pasta with kale. This one, I can guarantee you got everything you need in your local grocery store. For me, I just have to be sure to pick up a bag of frozen shrimp. And finally, from Blue Apron, a Hoisin glazed chicken meatball. And now this one, for sure, we're going to change that ground chicken to ground turkey. And everything else we're going to adapt to make it work for us for a weekly dinner. So let's get cooking. One of the great things about these meal delivery kits is everything you need is right there. So the first thing I'm going to do is pull out all these ingredients, and the recipe card encourages you to wash and dry all your produce, so that's ready to go too. So that's what I've done. I'm going to start out with 2 potatoes. These are just russets. The recipe did call for Yukon Gold, and I'm making enough that will last for a couple of dinners as sides. So this one potato is gigantic. We're going to go ahead and use it, and then we'll have plenty of leftovers to use later in the week when maybe I don't want to cook as much. So here I am. I'm going to leave the peels on. We're just going to cube these up. It recommends 1/2-inch cubes. Just try to keep them as similar as possible so they'll all cook at the same rate. I'm putting these on a cookie sheet with a Teflon nonstick pad underneath, and then we're going to season with a drizzle of olive oil and some salt and pepper. And then I'm just going to get in there with my hands and mix these all up. If you're the squeamish kind, put some gloves on, but this olive oil washes right off, and it's good for your skin too. So we'll get these mixed up and then move on. You'll want to preheat your oven to 450 and set your timer for about 12 or 13 minutes. You're going to flip these about halfway through. The total cooking time should be about 25 minutes. Next, we're going to use an onion. This one calls for red onion. This is just a yellow onion, and I'm just going to cut that into thick slices. And then we have our garlic that we're going to peel, and then we're going to mince that. And then we have a lemon that we're just going to cut in half and set that aside, and then move on to our zucchini. The zucchini, we're going to cut the ends off, and then we're going to cut it in half lengthwise, and then slice it into 1/2-inch thick moon-shaped slices, half moons. And again, you're just trying to get these cut about the same width. So if you prefer a little thinner or a little thicker, that's fine. Just try to keep them all about the same thickness so they cook at the same time. If you like cilantro, the recipe does call for a fresh bunch of cilantro. I'm just going to use parsley because we don't care for cilantro. And then on a different cooking sheet, I'm going to go ahead and separate our onion slices and spread those out. We're going to also add our zucchini and then some salt and pepper and another drizzle of our olive oil. Go ahead and mix that up with your hands or with gloves. And then this is going to be set aside. You're going to add your pork tenderloin to this baking sheet, and it will go into the oven with the potatoes once the pork tenderloin is cooked. Now, I have a big hunk of pork tenderloin. This is probably about 1.25 pounds-ish. I'm going to use this and just cut it into 3 thick pieces. The recipe only calls for 12 ounces, so You can do with much less than this. I want to have some leftovers to cut up for my lunch salad, so I'm happy to have all of the extra. You could also go ahead and slice off that fat pad if that bothers you. We're just going to salt and pepper this on the first side, and then if you need more seasoning when it goes into the pan, you can do the same on the side that doesn't have any seasoning. Here we have some olive oil that's been warming up, and we're going to swirl it around the pan before we add in our tenderloin. And we're going to just cook this, stirring or turning it occasionally until it's browned all over, about 10 minutes. Now, what I found is that this, after you cook it, sear it basically in the pan and then put it in the oven. Mine was way overdone. So what I'm going to recommend to you is just sear it and finish cooking it in the oven, and be sure to check it with your meat thermometer. Here the timer's gone off, so we're going to go ahead and flip these potatoes before they go back in the oven for another 12-13 minutes. So this has been about 5 minutes. I'm not really flipping these a lot. I'm just going to let them sear on each side, and we'll continue flipping those once those potatoes are out of the way. It's got a nice pretty sear on it. And then again, you're going to cook another 5-ish minutes on the other side. When these are cooked, then you're going to go ahead and grab your pan that has your zucchini and onion on it, and you'll just nestle your pork tenderloin into that baking sheet. We're going to go ahead and put that in the oven, and we are going to roast the vegetables and finish cooking the pork in the oven. It says 12 to 15 minutes. Again, just note that mine was way overdone. I think my meat thermometer registered 185, and your pork is done at 145. So I could have used much less time in the oven if I had been checking it right along. We're going to use the same pan, and we're going to just saute our garlic, let that become aromatic, don't burn it. And then we're going to add a tablespoon of butter to the pan and let that melt also. So after a minute or two, the recipe calls for adding a chicken demi-glaze and a half cup of water. Now this is what I'm going to improvise. You could use chicken stock with no water instead of the demi-glaze. And what I've done is, remember my little freezer container of cream of chicken soup? I'm going to go ahead and use that. And I will put in some of the water to help uncondense that, if you will. And then we'll cook it, stir it up, and cook that down. And remember, you're deglazing the pan as you go, so stir up the little brown bits on the bottom of the pan. And then we're going to go ahead and juice half of the lemon into the pan. And then we're going to add a little more seasoning just so it's to your taste. And you'll want to taste that again once everything is mixed up and make sure that it's going to be to your liking. I made a nice creamy sauce with that chicken stock. Here's our second taste. And I think we're just fine. So our oven timer has gone off for the potatoes. Those are going to come out of the oven. We're going to throw those in a bowl and put a lid on them so they'll stay nice and warm for dinner. You see, I sampled them to make sure they were done. They were great. And then we're going to go ahead and pull the zucchini and the pork tenderloin out of the oven and check that with our meat thermometer. And again, as I said, I wish I had not cooked this quite as long because it was definitely past well done. Now, having said that, the flavor on this dish is terrific. So this is something that your family may really enjoy. What I have decided as I kind of plate up these vegetables to go onto the table is that there are other ways that I enjoy pork tenderloin more than roasting. So this is a recipe that I'm going to let go because, for instance, during the summer, all of the pork tenderloins that we made into kebab recipes, I far more enjoyed those than this particular dinner. And was that in part because I overcooked the pork? Don't know, don't really care. I just really enjoyed those pork kebab recipes, so that's how I'm going to prepare it in the future. Now, to plate this, the recipe says to slice the pork and then arrange the pork on top of your potatoes and vegetables. I'm just going to go ahead and throw it in the sauce and coat the pork with that delicious sauce and then plate it from there. And guys, don't forget the cilantro if you're using that in your recipe. I'm just going to give everything a sprinkle with some dried parsley and do the other squeeze of lemon. And you could also cut that lemon into 2 pieces and plate that with your dinner. Here's what it looked like on the plate. The potatoes and the zucchini were delicious. The sauce was delicious. I just overcooked this tenderloin. And again, that is my fault, not the fault of the recipe. I wish I had really checked that temperature more throughout the cooking than I did. Now, I stated that I wanted leftovers of both the potatoes and the pork. This pork cut up on our salads over the next couple of days was delicious, so I was happy to have that. And of course, hubby loves the potatoes roasted, mashed, however he can get them. And so that was certainly enjoyed over the next couple of days also. So we both enjoyed the meal. It is just not one that I'm going to keep for the rotation. Our spicy shrimp recipe from Blue Apron says that it was inspired by Italian American recipes for shrimp scampi. Now, I am a fan of shrimp scampi, and I certainly enjoyed this shrimp meal. It's a nice way to add some fish to your diet. So again, we're going to get started by cleaning our produce, and we're going to slice up some vegetables. So I've also put on a pot of water over on the stove because we're going to be doing some pasta, of course, to go with it. So here I have gone ahead and instead of using scallions, I'm just using some green onions. We're separating our white part from our dark part. And then I also have a colander in the sink with the washed kale. Now I've lost some footage here on cooking, preparing the kale. You'll see in my pot that I've got that already sauteing on the stovetop. There's my pot of water, and the recipe calls for bucatini pasta, which I'm not sure what that is, but I have some linguine in the cupboard that I'm going to use instead. And I'm also taking liberty, I'm not going to get out my garlic cloves tonight. I'm just going to use dried powdered garlic in tonight's recipe. Stir up your pasta, put a lid on it, and cook that according to your pasta directions. So this dish is perhaps made a little more forward, garlic forward, than Rod and I prefer. That's why I opted for the dried garlic. You're going to flavor, though, this kale that we've got sauteing on the dish here with the onion and a bit of that garlic. And then we're also going to go ahead and give a couple squeezes of our lemon to the wilted kale that we've got going here. And when you're satisfied with how this is cooked, we're actually going to go ahead and put that in a bowl. And just, you don't even have to keep it warm, guys, because it's going to be added to the shrimp when that's finished cooking. Then wipe out your pan with a paper towel, add some oil, and let that come up to temperature. And then we'll add in our shrimp, and you're going to make sure that this is dried. You don't want it wet from thawing or whatever. This has been in a colander for me, so I'm just going to add it directly into the pan. And realize shrimp only takes a couple of minutes to cook, so don't walk away. Keep your eye on this. I'm going to flip this over on the other side when it's lightly browned. The recipe calls for just using a large pan. If you have a non-stick, that works. And if you've been around for a while, I cook most often in this IKEA non-stick wok. That's just my favorite pan. use whatever you've got. If you've got cast iron, that would work great too. Okay, so I mentioned scampi, so here comes our butter. Once your shrimp is cooked, you're going to add that pat of butter to the pan and then add back in your cooked kale. And it calls for also some seasoning, some spiciness. It calls for red pepper flakes. I'm just going to use a sprinkle of cayenne pepper. Use whatever you like and as much as you like. We like flavor and a little bit of spice. We don't like it super hot, so we go with just a little sprinkle of cayenne. And then just give this a toss, and you're going to cook it another couple of minutes or until you're ready to eat. So we're pretty much ready to eat. The shrimps are already cooked, so we're going to go ahead and plate that. So our pasta is finished cooking, and we're going to drain that. It does call for reserving some of the pasta water, and I didn't need it this particular day, so I'm giving this a stir before we walk over to the colander. Now, there's no need to stop the cooking on this pasta because it's going to go right into our pan with the shrimp and the kale. So just drain it off, give it a good shake, and then add it back into your pan. Give this all a good stir, and then I do decide to go ahead and add just a couple tablespoons of the pasta water back into the sauce. You want this definitely saucy, and your butter, that little bit of pasta water, and the kale should provide that. Now I'm just gonna finish the dish right here in the pan, so I'm gonna go ahead and add the green onion tops and a squeeze of lemon to the dish instead of plating it and then doing all of that. And this comes together quickly and it is delicious. This one is a super fast dinner. If you buy your kale already chopped up and pre-washed, it makes it even faster. The only time for me, the only thing I really have to keep in mind is the night that I'm having shrimp is to be sure to remember to take it out of the refrigerator, the freezer, and thaw it. So that's just a caveat if you cook like I do. This was delicious. It will go into the rotation. And hubby liked it too. These are very flavorful, delicious meatballs. I am not a fan of cooking meatballs just because I'm challenged when it comes to flipping and turning them, but that's the way it goes. It's worth the effort, I think, on this, although I considered making this into more of a casserole than a meatball, just by browning the chicken once it's flavored and going from there. We're going to go ahead and prep our veggies. This is 2 zucchinis, cut the ends off, quarter them lengthwise, and then cut them into 1/4-inch slices. You'll see there on my cutting pad that I've also got a little thumb of ginger ready to mince and a clove of garlic. And I forgot to tell you, I've got a pan of water going to cook the rice, and I've already rinsed the rice, so it's ready to go when we're done cutting this. Guys, just cook the rice to the directions on your bag, and I'm going to let mine come to a boil, and then I'm going to put the lid on and just let it simmer for about 15 minutes. Back over on my cutting mat, I'm going to mince the garlic and the ginger. Back at our stovetop, we're going to put a little spritz of oil in the pan. That's about 2 teaspoons, and then we're going to bring that up to temperature. I am going to go ahead and get these aromatics ready to go, and they're going to go into the meatball mixture. So we want these just to be sauteed. You want to bring out the flavor of the ginger, the garlic, and either scallions or green onions, whatever you're using. In the pan that I'm going to use to make the meatballs, I'm going to add in my ground turkey. This has come out of the freezer. It's completely thawed. We'll add that to the aromatics in the bowl. And then it calls for some panko. This is a 1/4 cup of Walmart brand panko. We'll do some hoisin sauce, and I'm kind of using up the rest of a container of hoisin here. you're going to take and basically quarter what the recipe calls for. So a quarter cup of hoisin sauce is what the recipe calls for, a quarter cup of soy sauce. So in those, you're just going to use a teaspoon of each. And then it also calls for soy glaze. And we're going to just opt to do that when we do the sauce. We're not going to put any additional soy sauce in here. And you'll add as much of the spiciness as you like. It calls for the sambo olek. I'm saying that incorrectly, I'm sure. I'm using sriracha, and I just use about a teaspoon of that. Mix everything together, and then the recipe calls for forming these into meatballs. Now, as I said, I'm not much of a meatball person, and I usually use a cookie scoop to make the meatballs. Tonight, I'm just going to use a tablespoon and form them as round as I can and get those into our hot pan. While I'm starting to put the meatballs in, our timer goes off for our rice, so we're going to give that a fluff, and then we're just going to put it back onto the stove top with the lid on so it will be ready and warm for dinner. Then finish putting your meatballs into your pan and start cooking. You're going to want to sear all the sides of the meatball, and this is where I have the challenge. Not only turning them over, but making sure that the meatball is thoroughly cooked. So what I do is when these are coming off the pan, when I think they're cooked, I'm just going to put them onto a dish. And then when I'm all done, that whole dish is going to go into the microwave, and I'm just going to zap it for a minute or two just to make sure that they are 100% cooked through. You that are meatball connoisseurs and have some tips, please leave them in the comments down below. I could really use the help with those. We're going to use the same pan with a little bit of oil in it. We'll add back in our zucchini. And then I just grab my wood spatula here and we'll try to get the little bits of that goodness that's stuck on the pan. And that will become part of the sauciness of this zucchini. It's delicious, by the way. Zucchini also cooks pretty fast, so it's only going to take a couple of minutes to bring this up to temperature and cook it. We're also going to season with a little bit of salt and pepper, and you're going to cook just till it's slightly softened. Now, all your components are going to come together in this pan. When you finish cooking the zucchini, you're going to add in your hoisin sauce, your remaining 3 tablespoons of hoisin sauce. And see, I've got a little cup of water over there on the side. I wish I hadn't added that, but I did. I was using up the remaining hoisin in the bottle, and I added water to it, so I really didn't need to add this water too. I've mixed back in the meatballs. I'm giving everything a stir. And now here's my homemade soy glaze. I didn't cook that ahead of time. It's just the remaining 3 tablespoons of soy sauce, a little bit of ginger powder, and some brown sugar. You can do the same thing. You don't need to buy a separate bottle of soy glaze. There's the water that went in that really didn't need to go in, but it was just fine. You're going to cook this another 3 to 5 minutes, stirring occasionally. You just want to make sure that the meatballs are cooked through. In my case, I didn't need to worry about that because I had put them in the microwave. Check it for seasoning to see if you need any additional salt and pepper. I knew we wouldn't with all that soy sauce. That was my onion tops that I've added back in. You know what, I do forget, the recipe calls for some black and white sesame seeds to add as garnish on top. I did forget to add those. You can see here, it would have been pretty with those added. But guys, this is absolutely delicious. And I hope you'll make it, because if you enjoy Chinese food or Asian flavors, this is a keeper. Again, if you guys know any suggestions to help me become a better cooker of meatballs, let me know. I know a lot of it is patience. I just don't have the patience to do it. But make this, guys. It's good. 2 thumbs up. Guys, I hope you're enjoying this content. If you like our channel, please share it with your friends. Hit like and be sure to leave a comment down below. So guys, do you have any recipes that are sitting around in a recipe book, a recipe pile? Get them out and start cooking. Let's find some good recipes we can add to our family's weekly rotation. Thanks for being here.